Thank you. Okay, so no need for introductions then. He already said who I am and what I do. So let's start with a question, right? If I would now tell all of you, go and change a single line of code. Let's say change a label in your application, something like that, right? And use the same processes you use always, so no cheating. How much time would it take you to deploy to production? A single line of code. How much? 1 day. 3 weeks? 3 days. Okay. So, huh? Okay, we're going to become friends. That's a good answer. I mean, because when you think about it, it's almost ridiculous to say, oh, I'm going to change a label somewhere. I'm going to change a single line of code, and it's going to take days, weeks, even hours is too much for something like that, right? It's simply, we're talking about a single line of code. And now if you extrapolate that to more complicated, real things we do, then things become much, much, much longer. So what the way how we are trying to fight that or to make that more competitive is with continuous delivery and continuous deployment, which is not the only thing you should do, but it's definitely part of it, right? So, and for now it's not that much of a hype, but last couple of years, maybe 5 even, everybody talked about it. Almost every company I know of implemented, made a project to implement continuous delivery or deployment. Most of them failed to do it. I mean, you know, enterprises fail to do most of the stuff. And the reasons why they're usually starting, because they heard Gartner speaking about, it's modern, it's popular, so we always do whatever is modern and popular, and all those things, because people, the same thing like last year, everybody did big data, right? And this year, everybody is doing containers. Nobody understands what they are, but they're doing it anyway. Gartner said it, right? So the real reasons why we want continuous deployment or delivery is, first of all, we get very early feedback to our business. Business finds out when things are wrong or which things are successful much, much faster than if we do it in most of the other ways. Development becomes incredibly faster, right? Because simply once you get confidence in a system, you can just bash code, push it to your repository, and suddenly it's going to be in production, right? You get a certain level of security that you didn't have before, and you can really move much faster. Much fewer merge conflicts. There are no merge conflicts simply because we don't wait for days, weeks, months until we merge. We merge every, I don't know, minutes, maybe hours. Maybe we don't merge at all. We'll get there. And much lower deployment risk. Usually companies are afraid to do continuous deployment because they think that it's risky. I beg to differ, because it's much riskier to actually develop something for months and then put it in production. Nobody knows what's going to happen, right? If you do it continuously, then risk is actually mitigated on very small chunks of code, and changes are done much faster. So let's start from the beginning, right? Continuous integration. Who's doing continuous integration here? Really? I'm in the wrong country. Okay, this is embarrassing. Guys, this is embarrassing. I must tell you that. Okay, so let's go through it quickly. Continuous integration means that you have automated certain steps in your pipeline, right? I say certain, not all of them. Part of it is automated. We merge to the main branch often. If whomever raised the hand is doing continuous integration, if you don't merge at least once a day to the main branch, you're not doing continuous integration. Let me tell you that. Because there is no word continuous if you have a branch that is merged a week later, or a month later, or a year later. Nobody knows. But so remove the word continuous if you're doing that. Fixing a problem always has the highest priority. I'm not sure which organizations you work with, but if actually anybody, when you find a bug, when your Jenkins instance sends you a message, there is a bug, and a manager tells you to continue working on a new feature, kick him in his ass, because that's wrong. Fixing a problem always has a priority, because if you don't fix it now, it will be much more expensive even an hour later, a day later, a week later. It's going to be much more expensive because you lose from your memory what is the cause of the problem. You need to fix it immediately. But the problem with continuous integration in general as a concept, it has very unclear status, right? Since there is certain level of automation and then comes manual QA, deployment, this and that, it's very unclear where it ends, right? Because it can end anywhere. People just put a couple of builds, create Jenkins, it creates a jar, run 5 tests, and you have continuous integration, right? It's not clear really what the end of the process is with continuous integration, except that we should have something automated. And it does not produce a production-ready process, meaning that at the end of the continuous integration pipeline, you're not ready to put to production, right? Because simply there are some steps afterwards, manual, that you need to run. So, for those of you not doing continuous integration, just ignore the rest of the presentation because you're not ready, right? Listen, just in case, it might be interesting, but you cannot move further towards continuous delivery and continuous deployment until you actually master at least some level of continuous integration, until you master automation up to a certain degree. So let's move on. Continuous integration, that was 15 years ago, right? Not for you guys, in Silicon Valley. So continuous delivery means that you are doing its extension in a way of continuous integration. So you need to be doing continuous integration, but you need to have your processes done in a way that your software is deployable throughout its life cycle. That means that every single commit that passed the whole process, fully automated, can go to production. You can invite a cleaning lady from your company to press the button and nothing bad will happen because everything is already tested, everything is fully automated. Keeping software deployable is always a priority. That's similar like for continuous integration, but with continuous integration, priority is fixing bugs. With continuous delivery, priority is not only that, priority is making software deployable at any moment, meaning that every single build can be deployed to production, no harm done. And you get very fast feedback on production readiness. You know when your software is ready to production. And push button deployments mean that the only thing that is manual in the process is push the button to go to production. That's the only manual part of the process. And the reason why we had that button is because your business or marketing department or somebody else wants to decide when to put a feature to production, right? Not to decide whether your software is ready for production or no. It is ready because it passed the whole flow, right? Everything is automated. If it's all green, it's ready for production. So it's not about readiness, it's only about business decision, what to put and when. So, continuous delivery means that every flow, already mentioned that from every commit from repository can be deployed to production. And I'm sorry, but weird things happening here, that's Internet Explorer. It's not my fault. And you only press a button and you have it there. So let's move even further, right? Continuous deployment, it's a step, even one more step towards the ultimate nirvana. And that means that, first of all, it's extension, it's further away than delivery, and there are no buttons to push, right? It means that whenever you bash your code, commit to Git, it goes to production. There is nothing in between, right? Now, to many, that might sound as science fiction, but if you look at how big companies, unicorn companies work, like Google, Netflix, this and that, even smaller ones, startups, actually this is being done. It's not science fiction. Many companies are doing that every single commit to production, assuming that all the tests were successful. So that really means that, again, every commit deployed to production. There are no manuals. Humans, each of you humans who are involved in a process after a commit, you need to understand that you will not be involved anymore. At that point, you will be involved earlier. We'll get there as well. So, one of the things, now, assuming that this is the process, meaning that commit is the last manual action that anybody does, the order of how we do things needs to change drastically. Because obviously, if there is no human involvement, if there are no manual actions after commit, that means that we still need tests, right? That means the test needs to be written before the commit, right? Test needs to be written before the code itself. That means that you need to go to some form or another of test-driven development, behavior-driven development, whatever driven development you want to use, but tests are written before we commit the code. Otherwise, of course, it's always going to be green because you're not going to have tests, right? So the tests, whomever is any testers here, okay, you need to do it in advance. I'm sorry. That's how it needs to work. And those of you who are not testers, who are coders, you will need to start writing your own tests because you need to trust your code. If you don't trust your code, you're going to fail big time. That leaves us to proactive approach, and that does not apply only to tests. That means that actually your infrastructure needs to be set up in advance. Your provisioning of servers needs to be fully automated. Configuration management needs to be fully automated. Everything needs to be fully automated before the commit, right? And when I say before the commit, I don't mean postpone commit for 5 months until we're done. I mean have some kind of service-oriented organization. And you cannot fake it. Now, the bad thing about the process, if you start doing continuous delivery, continuous deployment, you're going to fail almost certainly. You're going to have production that is not going to work, right? Your users are going to complain. That's a part of the process. But because your safety net is going to be removed, so you're going to have to do things right. And but after some time, maybe a day, maybe a week, maybe never, things are gonna start becoming much better simply because of that safety net is removed, right? Your code is gonna start being much better than it was before because you know, oh, if I mess it up, it goes to production, I'm gonna get fired, right? Type of attitude. So you need to do things right. It forces really good practices. So benefits. Benefits are probably obvious: faster time to market. Because if you wait for weeks or months until you release your feature, somebody else is going to do it before you, and then you're going to feel like a television channel today not today, when a Netflix came, right? Television doesn't exist anymore because somebody was faster. You will be building right product because you're going to get multiple feedbacks continuously. Your users are going to report what they like, what they don't like, what is wrong, what is right on daily basis, because you will be delivering at least once a day, probably every couple of hours, maybe even minutes, depending how big you are, right? Productivity, efficiency. You're going to have reliable releases, product quality is going to go skyrocket, and visibility, important part. Everybody's going to know what's happening at every given moment, feedback and all those things. I'm sorry, I realized actually this morning that my talk is going to be 25 minutes. I hoped it's going to be 45, so I'm not really prepared. I need to speak fast. Problems. It's very hard, right? And especially it's hard if you try to jump the hoops, meaning that you cannot start from nothing to continuous deployment. You need to go through continuous integration, continuous delivery, and then continuous deployment one day, right? You cannot just jump directly onto you cannot skip time, right? So it's really, it's hard, very hard, harder than you think, extremely. But one of the biggest changes and problems is that the change is required on every single level. So you cannot have non-continuous organization that wants to implement continuous processes, right? You cannot have departments separate type of separation where actually you have one department that is company within a company itself that does coding, the other department requirements, the third department testing, infrastructure, those things, right? That prevents you from being fast, that prevents you from being continuous. You need to start thinking about self-sufficient teams, right? And when I say team, when somebody tells me team, 50 people or 100 people, that's not a team, right? That's a school bus, right? A team is 6, maybe 8 people capable of delivering everything. That means that that small number of people needs to be capable of gathering requirements, doing coding, testing, deploying to production, monitoring what's going on, and all those things. That does not mean that you cannot rely on expertise from outside of your team, but ultimately it needs to be your responsibility, because if you're not self-sufficient, then you depend on somebody else. When you depend on somebody else, then you have handovers. Meaning, oh, I'm finished with my part. Hey, here you go, take it. See you in 3 months when my servers are finished, right? That does not work like that. I mean, it does work like that, unfortunately, but that's not really what we are trying to do today as industry. So technology will need to change. Not enough time to speak about technology, but you might even need to change frameworks, programming languages, many things if you want this to happen. Architecture, now this is one of the biggest challenges usually, because if your architecture is not designed to be testable, to be deployable, to be fast, and when I say testable, deployable, fast, I'm talking about the whole process being 5 to 10 minutes, maybe 15, right? If it's longer than that, if your process between the commit and being in production more than 15 minutes, what will happen? It will happen that actually you will go and grab your coffee after you commit your code, right? Then you're gonna get back and still the process will be running. And then you're gonna start working on the next feature, on the next thing, right? And once your brain switches to something else, it's very expensive for you to go back and fix the problem a couple of hours later when you receive email, oh, my build failed, right? So it needs to be very fast so that you don't have enough time to start working on something else, right? 5, 10 minutes, maybe 15, just enough to get a coffee. If you don't get email, everything worked fine, you move on to something else. You don't move to something else until your build is ready. And architecture is one of the main problems, right? If you use those huge monolithic applications, you know, WebLogic, JBoss, something like that stuff, you might never ever be able to make it that fast. That's one of the reasons, not the subject of this talk, so I'm not gonna go deep, but that's one of the reasons why industry is moving slowly towards microservices, because they're small. They can be, I can have a team of 6 people working on a service, right? I cannot have a team of 6 people working on a huge application because simply it requires more people. So I cannot have small teams, I cannot have autonomy, I cannot be fast, and many other things. Moving on, culture, I already mentioned. If your company is monolithic, pyramidal stuff, you know, open a Jira for whatever, and then wait for eternity. You cannot do it. So your culture needs to change drastically. And with culture, organizational structure. Now, I always find that in almost all companies that I've been working with, I think that Conway's law always, any of you heard about Conway's law? You know what Conway's law is? Yeah? 1 person, 2, 3. Oh. It's a magical number. Excellent. So Conway's law, 5 minutes, excellent. Conway's law says that organizations which design systems are constrained to produce designs which are copies of the communication structures of these organizations. What that really means is that your technical solution will always be a reflection of how you're organized, right? If you are one type of organization, monolithic organization, you're going to have monolithic applications. If you have 10 departments, you're going to have 10 different solutions for a single thing. You're going to have 10 separations, horizontal separations inside of your application, and so on and so forth. So one of the things about CD, and one of the big mistakes I think that companies make is try then to make, okay, so we're going to do this thing, right? The same thing as we're doing Docker, and we're going to make a new department, new team is going to be in charge of CD. Wrong, right? It's not something horizontal that spans a single department. It's vertical. It's not a new process. It's not another layer of stuff that you're doing. It does not belong to a single department. You cannot have a continuous integration, delivery, or deployment department. That's wrong. That's completely against the logic of it. It needs to span the whole organization. So you take organization, slice it like this, with all the layers that you have, and that's your team, right? That's 10, 50, 100 teams, not 100 departments organized locally. So, bunch of stuff. I heard I have, I don't know, a couple of minutes, so I'm gonna go fast. You need to have the same set of artifacts, processes, same release. Everything needs to be fully automated. Means that no manual thing, I already spoke about it. You might need to change the tools. You might want to go into more specialized, more smaller tools. Everything in VCS, fast. not enough time. So short feedback loops continuous, as I said before, does not mean monthly, weekly, it means daily, hourly, at least daily. I need to get to my favorite thing. This is where people freak out, right? You need to stop using branches. Oh, and then people freak out completely, right? We love branches. We just started at GitHub, right? We create branches like crazy. No, branches are evil. I mean, they're not evil. If your branches last for a couple of hours, if by the end of the day you merge your branch to the main line, you're okay, right? Anything longer than that, it's evil because you're postponing testing. You're postponing the knowledge of how well you did your job. So either very short-lived branches or directly commit to mainline, right? Scary, but it's a really good practice once you get used to it. So, how much time do I have? No time. Okay, so multifunction autonomous teams and stuff like that. I already spoke about it. That's the end. Buy my books, commercial questions. You not speak English? Was there somebody there? Yeah. I think Scrum is cool, but Scrum is a management type of, it's oriented towards management side of the story, and organizations benefit a lot. The fact that Scrum is implemented badly in most organizations is a different thing, but as idea it's very good. But Scrum itself is not enough. If you should take the technical part of the medal and join it with some XP practices. Not necessarily all, but I think that Scrum and XP, when you join management and or process type of thing like Scrum and XP, then they together form a really good combination. Yeah, it can. I mean, at the end, you have the end of the sprint. Does not mean that you're not delivering to production every 5 minutes. Yeah, it does not mean that, because sprint is about organization. You're not delivering a single feature in a sprint, right? Okay. Then my condolences. But the rest of you, you have multiple features in a sprint, right? And when it's done, you put it to production. Try to make it small, try to make it very agile. I mean, at the end of the day, actually, those 17 or whatever was the number of them, when they came up with the agile, they never thought to make a process that is unchangeable. So it's changing with time, and the necessities that, I mean, that's why we are moving into DevOps, because actually agile is not enough. Agile excluded operations and many other activities that actually are as important as testing and coding and requirements. So we can speak about DevOps. I think that DevOps is a new Scrum, XP, and a bunch of other things. It's Agile of today, I think. Any other question? Yes, please. How long do they live? A year? Yeah, I think that I'm not saying you don't have to do continuous, but if you want to put word continuous, your branch cannot be long-lived. Make it few hours a day. Go crazy. Make it a week, but not longer than that. Because and I'm not saying that it's wrong to have feature branches that are a couple of weeks long. It's not wrong. I'm just saying that you cannot put word continuous into the process. I don't have feedback from the CD, not CI. CI is do something, and there is manual something, right? I'm talking about fully automated process. I want feedback in production from my users. And I'm not saying it's not a good thing for everybody. It just, I like to have understanding of what each of the terms and philosophies means. And continuous means all the time, not every couple of weeks. Huh? Yes and no. I mean, feedback is many different things. Feedback from users, that's on a fully developed feature there's another story. We shouldn't have features that are long to develop. We should splice them and split them. But not only that, I want to see how it behaves in production. Because if it doesn't behave in production, even if it's half a feature, right? Change to the backend, change to the API something. I want to see how it behaves before I make more changes. I want to have bugs that are very easy to fix, right? And the only true way to know whether you have a bug is when you put it in production, right? Because until it's in production, that's kind of long time ago. When I worked in one of the other companies, we had that thing. I was one of the developers, and then QA says it doesn't work, and it works on my computer. The truth is that until it's in production, you don't know what it is.
Let's say you have dozens of developers that make dozens of commits almost simultaneously.
Okay.
So, if I commit something, and do you have a way to deal with that? So it may take a longer time to make that to the production with all tests running. Let's say test runs for 10 minutes.
Okay.
And in the middle of that test, another commit happens.
Okay.
How can I?
Obviously, you cannot deploy to the end of the process. You cannot do in parallel. So you obviously cannot initiate literally in parallel two deployments. That would not make sense. So that needs to be queued in a way. But running tests that can run in parallel, there is no problem with that. Oh, sorry. Finished. Speak to me afterwards. I'm sorry. Yes. Yes.